Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Road show Wednesday down here at Rosie's downtown, just a stone's throw from PBA, getting ready for Nebraska and Ohio State. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, the pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, has made his entrance as we're here till 6, tip-off at 6. So your advisement is it's okay to brave the weather. It's okay to make your way downtown. It's okay to find a meter spot. It's okay to order a beer and get a great burger, some wings. Find something you're going to love from the menu at Rosie's. 10th and P, where we're located. We're excited to be here on stage here at Rosie's. Elijah Herbel is chained back at the studios on 3800 Cornhusker Highway. But, hey, we are happy to be out. It was not bad getting down here. I know it's been one of those days weather-wise, but big ball game tonight. We will talk Dylan Raiola. We will talk rebuild with Nebraska football. We will spend time with Mike Babcock. He will join us here in the stream. Bill Doleman going to check in throughout a big part of the show. That is good news. Evan Bland from the World Herald going to join us on Nebraska football. And then Coach Jeff Smith, longtime Nebraska assistant, will break down some Nebraska-Ohio State thoughts tonight. Also been a pretty busy and big week of college basketball. They're still partying in the Little Apple. Behind me, you have a couple of black shirt flags flanked. You can watch the show and stream us on different platforms. Hail Varsity's YouTube channel, ESPN Lincoln, Facebook, and Twitter. And, of course, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio is where you can watch the show, connect, give us some input if you so choose. Catch Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers every weekday morning as well, 7 to 9 with Hail Varsity Radio. Behind me is Old Glory, the American flag. Elijah, I feel a little bit like I'm doing a Better Call Saul commercial here with this backdrop. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. We're centrally located. You want to play bags, Rosie's has you taken care of. You want to play beer pong, I challenge you, Bill Doleman. That can happen as well. But
I'm sitting here thinking that you're about to start doing the soliloquy from the start of the movie Patton. That's what I thought. That American flag behind you.
I'm going to walk in and start calling everyone the B word. No, I will not reenact George C. Scott's speech in Patton. It did win an Academy Award in 1970. But Patton, no, I get that. But no, I will confess to something by 6 o'clock tonight. Numbers to get in today here on Hail Varsity at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. And can email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com. Give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio or at Herbal Essence. We can bring in Bill Doleman. If he's like, are you going to eat? Yeah, I will turn you up and I will turn you on. Bill Doleman's off to the side. Squeeze it a little bit. Here he comes. There he is. We will get a confession out of you by 6 p.m. as well. But, hey, thanks for coming down, man.
Well, it's great out. You know, the weather's terrific. No traffic.
No.
There is no traffic in downtown Lincoln right now. So I've not been in Rosie's before. This is a nice place, and I'm impressed with some of the folks who have also made their way. And parking meter did not work, so hopefully I'm okay there too.
Yep, and what do you mean? I owe a ticket. It's interesting out, but you can brave down. Fred and the guys need you tonight. It is a big-time ball game, Elijah, Bill. We'll get to some football in a moment, but Ohio State right now, they are leaning on the ropes. They've lost 4 in a row. They've had their heart ripped out. Stop me if you've heard this before. in some last possession ball games. This on the hardwood, though. And despite their talent level, despite the freshman phenom, Ohio State very gettable tonight. Nebraska is, well, undermanned. Juwan Gary's been so key for them all year. He's out for an extended period of time. We'll hear from Fred Hoiberg in a little bit, but the good news is all signs point to Sam Griesel going tonight. But Nebraska's 0 against Ohio State at PBA, 0 in their last 5. But the Buckeyes got ranked, and they haven't won since January 1st against Northwestern, who's been really pretty good in the Big Ten this year. But they have been so close multiple times, but Nebraska needs to find a way tonight. The other part of this, too, is you have a loss by Ohio State at Rutgers. Preceding that, they lost at home to Minnesota. So, again, Ohio State's punch drunk right now. It's really kind of do or die. What fork in the road do you take if you're Nebraska basketball? Still time, clearly, but it's imperative that Nebraska needs to bounce back. Illinois did not go well their last home game for the Big Red, and then things got a little bit ugly. They fought hard in the first half, couldn't hang against Purdue in the second half.
Here's the thing about this Nebraska team that perplexes me, and I guess has perplexed me for several seasons now, and maybe it's a strength for this team going into tonight. Ohio State needs to find its way, right? They thought they had a lot of momentum going into the new year, and as you mentioned, then they lose to Northwestern. It's like, well, what happened there? And they've not been able to get back on the right track. Unfortunately or fortunately, I think Nebraska is used to that. How are they going to find their way? How are they going to come back after a disappointing performance? And then they do, and they will, beat up on a team like Creighton, or they're almost knock off Purdue. They didn't play all that terrible at Purdue the first half, and that game got away from them. Similar with Illinois, but Nebraska's that team that just seems to be like, well, that didn't go very well. I guess we just got to go to plan B, C, D, or E, and not everybody else has a plan B or C. So I just find it perplexing that sometimes Nebraska's waywardness, maybe it's a strength, I don't know. Consistency of inconsistency may be a strength where other teams can't find their way out of it.
Well, the thing is with Husker basketball this season is that you can't afford to be inconsistent with how slim your margins are if you want to go play postseason. I'm not talking NCAA tournament. I think with what we've seen from this Husker basketball team, we know they're not an NCAA tournament team, but to go sneak your way into the NIT, your margin for error is very small. You can't go drop games that are winnable, especially at home against a team that's been reeling like Ohio State. This is a great opportunity to get one against a team that I don't think a lot of people would have chalked this one up as a W before the season started, but now you get here, it's January, you have a good shot against them. I think you match up well, and it's simply put, it's gettable, and if you're not getting your gettable games, your margins are not big enough for you to be talking about postseason play. If you have dreams of changing what this Husker basketball program is and getting at least into something in the postseason, getting yourself a decent seed in the Big Ten tournament, getting yourself into the NIT at the end of the season, these games, like the games tonight, are the games you need to get.
But haven't we been saying that for a long time? Nebraska's margins for error are so slim if they're going to do A, if they're going to do B, if they're going to get into it just seems like we see this every single season. But at the same time, Nebraska's that team, remember, at the end of last year. Nobody wanted to play Nebraska last year. They kind of got hot, and they had a couple of wins on the road and beat some teams that were going to the NCAA tournament. But for different reasons, that team could put some points on the board. This team on the other side of it can be rugged defensively. I mean, look what they did to Iowa. What was that, like 25 or 30 points below their season scoring average? They're averaging like 80 or something, and they score 50. Everybody knows night in and night out in the Big Ten that, yeah, we can beat them, but it might be tough, and we don't know. Maybe there's going to be that one game where Nebraska, springs 86 on you, or they hold you to 56. It's just such an enigma.
Big-time enigma because of the lack of consistency offensively. They just don't hit shots from downtown. You're not getting – we've talked till we're blue in the face about complementary football. Is the defense, the offense, special teams all going to play well? Nebraska's lineup and even bench, the one consistent you've had, at least against Purdue, is Tominaga, right? He's come in and had good performances. You need a big game tonight from C.J. Wilcher. You've seen Breidenbach continue to elevate, give you 7 to 10 points in battle on the glass. But tonight's a big night for Wilcher. He has been struggling. He is too talented from that three-point line, or the catch-and-shoot artist he is, or at least was advertised to be. He's got to come out and play ball. And then don't get lost defensively either. Ohio State murders people on the glass. They're so good defensively and offensively. And from a standpoint of efficiency, it's been really pretty good. Now, Ohio State's close but no cigar all season. Right there with North Carolina, their one big win this year, aside from Northwestern, has been Texas Tech when Tech was ranked and not reeling. But they've been swept by Rutgers. They've been right there a couple of different times in action, right there against Duke. So they played a good schedule. They were probably an 8 or 9 seed a couple of weeks ago, but they're also on the outside looking in. Do they get things figured out? Mike Babcock is in the green room from Hale Varsity. We're here at Rosie's 10th and P, ahead of Nebraska and Ohio State. We invite you down, get a beer, get a shot, get a burger, stay warm. Again, tread lightly with your footing, but it's nice and taken care of here outside of Rosie's downtown. We invite you. Guys, we're going to talk football for a minute, and we'll get back to basketball a little bit later into the show. And pretty interesting interview. We're gonna hold Bill Doleman right here, Elijah. Dylan Raiola in recruiting.
I knew we were going down that path.
But Dylan Raiola, pretty good sit down with the national folks from On 3. And he opened up a little bit as to what went down with Ohio State, and that was more of him kind of getting caught up in the moment and rushing his decision. He was acting on emotion, and he's ready to step back, take his time, and assess the situation. He is so big on, relationship, connection, and right now he's made visits to USC. He is the 5-star quarterback in the class of 2024. He's been to Georgia. He's been to Ohio State. He's been to Oregon. He's been to Lincoln. Clearly, he's been to Lincoln. And right now, what kind of coaching connection can he develop, not only with Nebraska, clearly with Uncle Donnie, but with Matt Rule. And Elijah, Bill, what's standing out here in this story is not only the open book Dylan is showing, but the fact that Matt Rule was the first coach in this recruiting cycle to get down and see him. The Buffs have been by, Georgia's been by, OU's been by, Michigan's been by, but Matt Rule was the first head coach to stop there. There's the family connection clearly, but Nebraska will be in the thick of this running because of Uncle Donnie, but Nebraska's not taking the inclusion in this group for granted. Clearly an apples and oranges here, on field versus off field, with those previous programs I mentioned.
And Nebraska also the first to visit him twice thus far in this recruiting cycle, which it's been 5 days since the window
opened
Coach
up.
Rule,
I'm down in Arizona too right now.
Matt Rule is there, and now the reports are out that Marcus Satterfield is down there as well, visiting him today. So Nebraska, a quick fire 2. And one quote really stood out to me from that story from Chad Simmons and On 3. That's a quote from Dylan just about why Nebraska is in the running. He said, "Nebraska is Nebraska. My dad went there, so Nebraska is family to my family. It's a program with a lot of history. A lot of great players have played there, and Nebraska will always be special to my family." That's the quote from Dylan Raiola. This isn't lip service. This isn't him saying, you know what, my dad wants me to give Nebraska their due, so I'll let Coach Rule come down and talk to me. I'll go visit him to keep my dad happy. There's genuine interest there just based on what Nebraska has always been to his family and the special place that Nebraska holds in the collective hearts of the Raiola family. So it's not like this is some situation where he's giving Nebraska the time of day. You know what, I'm going to hear what they have to say, and then I'm going to go to Georgia. I don't think it's that way at all. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Nebraska is the leader. I think we may be a little early in that right now, but Nebraska is very much in the running in this recruiting, which is, what we've heard from a lot of people, but with how hard Rule's going to push this, it comes down to building the relationship, because I think Dylan likes Nebraska for what they are, are, but it comes down to building that relationship with the staff and seeing yourself fit in within the program. And the program is less the tradition, history of Nebraska, and more what Matt Rule is building. If Dylan can see himself fitting in, I mean, I can see how crazy is this, the number one player in the country coming to Nebraska. I don't think that's crazy to think, should Matt Rule do a good job recruiting and building that relationship.
Agree with that. Nebraska will stay on it. Family to my families is a money quote. Now, the reality of this situation, too, is what does Dylan Raiola want to be? Does he want to be kind of the lightning strike as Matt Rule rebuilds Nebraska? Is he part of that accelerated rebuild? A lot of the portal kids this year, on top of what they develop here the next 2 years, is going to turn out to be important. We'll get into accelerating the rebuild a little bit. Good story from Mitch Sherman. We'll talk with the rebuild with Mike Babcock here coming up. But that is a monster piece, Bill. If you get the right pieces in, you allow some of your linemen to develop, and then you get that stud quarterback who can, if he's ready, come in and do things. Easier said than done, or at least learn and then launch. We'll get more into Dylan Raiola, Nebraska football. We're down here at Rosie's 10th and P, Hail Varsity Roadshow Wednesday.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Roadshow Wednesday in front of Nebraska-Ohio State down here at Rosie's. 10th and P in front of Nebraska-Ohio State. Earlier tip time, which means you are thirsty now. You are hungry now. We invite you down to Rosie's. Bill Doleman riding shotgun for Elijah Herbel. He is back at the studio.
Schmitty,
looking like you're on South Park. It's okay.
Well, no, I'm just like, it's crazy. Your Jedi mind tricks have worked, because just like that, I am now thirsty and I am now hungry, and I do in fact want a beer. It's crazy how that works. You say it and it's true.
Well, Mike Babcock, Babbers, can I bring you a burger from Rosie's? Mike Babcock with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Babbers, you need a burger?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get Babbers a burger, and we'll also reenact the Tim Brewster call to arms here with Mike Babcock. We're going to pop out of our chair, up and down, left and right, yes sir, no sir, and maybe even provide a code red. What do you think of that, fellas?
I know Deion Sanders is a show all to his own, but who knew that he was bringing the clown show with him?
Careful uttering clown.
I mean, Sideshow Brew was that was really, really odd. That was just a really strange, and that was released by Colorado, right?
Yeah.
So for them to think that this is going to be great, there was mixed reviews about Deion's pack your bags if you don't want to be here deal, or everybody's coming, so have your luggage ready. That was odd in its own way, but it was, that's Deion. Not a lot of people know Tim Brewster, but they do now. And being in Minnesota and being run out of a bunch of other jobs, that was just a really odd video to release.
Wasn't good, Mike, was it? I don't know that you connect with 18 to 22-year-olds that way, unlike, say, Coach Rule and staff finding their way down to Arizona to get some FaceTime with Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, I like the way Coach Rule is approaching things a little bit better. He and his assistants. And I probably mentioned this before, but the thing that really impressed me from the news conference with Barthel was when he was talking about guys he had coached at, running backs he had coached at Connecticut, and he choked up and he couldn't complete the sentence. He had to take a break because he was talking about guys that he had coached last season. That kind of relationship, being able to build that kind of relationship, is what recruiting is all about. And I think that's reflective of Rule and his staff. The kind of coaches that he's brought in, that's their approach, is building relationships with players that goes beyond the football field, which was obviously what was in this case. So for me, that's the way you go about it. Now, whether what happens next season, his first season, also plays into this, I think. Because you can talk about it, and right now we're in that period of time where it's great optimism. It can be as good as your imagination makes it right now. But when they start playing games, then what happens? And what do you see from this team initially? And it's not going to be easy the first season because you're making that transition and you're kind of trying to develop guys and get guys to fit into your system. But we'll see how that affects recruiting going forward.
Guys, I'm anxious to see how Nebraska can bridge what needs to be developed with winning now or being competitive now, because with every change, there's been some guys thrust. Riley played a lot of young kids, Nick Gates, Hymus, to name a couple of guys that came in and played as freshmen or even redshirt freshmen on the offensive line, both guys at tackle. You fast forward to Frost, and in the 2020 season even, 2018's line wasn't bad because you had some guys. But 2019, I should say, you had Corcoran make his first career start end of the year, but still, he's really never been able to settle down. Let's spend a moment here, go around the horn. Babbers and then Bill and Elijah, how do you feel about accelerating this rebuild? Because to your point, Mike, it does kind of set the table for not only the Dylan Raiola sweepstakes, but just how quickly or slowly you get out of the gate.
Well, first of all, you should have Bill speak first, and then I can just agree with him, and we can move on to Elijah.
I was planning on doing the same thing.
Elijah, the floor is yours, baby.
No, I think that it's at the point where you have to speed it up in the sense that you need some immediate success, and however you define that, I'm not saying you have to win 9 or 10 games and compete for the Big Ten championship or whatever, but you gotta have a winning season. You gotta qualify for a bowl game. You should be able to do that in your first season if the talent is there. And I think that we feel like it is. We've seen how many close games Nebraska has lost in the last couple of seasons, how competitive it's been, but never gotten over that hump. So if you come in with that as a background and you're bringing in guys that you feel good about, and there's no question that they're doing a good job of recruiting, I think, from the standpoint of Coach Rule said that at the introductory news conference, it wasn't so important the number of stars. It was whether they fit into the system, or they had the ability to fit into the system as he wanted it. And I think he even said at one point they could be no stars, but if they fit in there, and you have an opportunity to develop those players, you have some success, and that's immediate. And that, again, how you define immediate success is probably a little bit different than some people are looking at it, but I feel like they have the ability to do that.
The thing that I think that is advantageous to Matt Rule and his staff are the players who are coming back. A lot of times when you have a coaching transition and you go from, a down season, although Nebraska did finish on an up note with, of course, the win over Iowa, but you did not have a lot of people fleeing the program, players fleeing the program. Scott Frost is gone. Mickey Joseph is gone. I'm out of here. I'm going someplace else. Yes, Garrett Nelson is leaving for the greener pastures in the NFL. That's going to be a big loss, but he's not leaving on bad, bitter terms. Right. I'm out of here. I'm going someplace else. Feast leaving is probably a detriment to the defense, but it doesn't seem like there's acrimony there. Trey Palmer. everybody knows Trey Palmer should go to the NFL right now. So Nebraska, in the wake of a coaching transition, 2 of them actually, in 1 year and a season in which you don't go to a bowl game, does not have this huge roster turnover. And like I said, not a lot of acrimony in that. You do have Casey Thompson probably coming back reasonably healthy, okay? He's got some time. He's an experienced guy. You've got some good receivers around Palmer that are going to come back. You've got some pluses coming back on the offensive line that guys will be eligible. Guys will probably be healthy. The offensive line should be a little stronger. So in terms of what Matt Rule has to work with and experience in playing at Nebraska, being within the Nebraska system, and I mean, university, being in Lincoln, playing at Memorial Stadium, there are a lot of pluses that would indicate this team, as Mike said, should have a winning record. Mm-hmm. It should be in a bowl game. There's not acrimony. Everything is feeling really good right now going into the spring, and who knows what additions might be made now and might be made after the spring. The entire defensive line last year was rebuilt after spring ball. So I think that there are a lot of positives for Matt Rule to have a very good first season.
Elijah, it just feels like it could hit, and man, even if you get to 7, dare I say 8, it'd feel even bigger and better. And then you can feel good about what's been proven, and that's development. You can win now and then season, my friend, for the future. So it's not this gap that exists, and you're yo-yoing with a good season and then a tough season. You don't want to turn into Michigan State, I guess, with the portal lottery.
Well, let's look around at what some other schools in the Big Ten under first-year head coaches, and I'm talking coaches that I think have found success and found their footing in the Big Ten. The 2 I look at in the past decade that have really found their footing quickly and built something are P.J. Fleck at Minnesota and Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Now, Harbaugh at Michigan's his own thing because of the what should I say, the history of Michigan within the Big Ten, what they are, the recruiting base that they have. And you look at Harbaugh. Harbaugh stepped into a program that finished the year at 5-7 and turned around, went 9-3 in the regular season his first year at Michigan. And when you look at what Nebraska was last year, I don't think that Nebraska team had all that much less talent than that Michigan team of 2014. Now, Harbaugh was able to bring in some of his guys, and he was able to hit on some recruits quickly, and I think that's a question. Another question for Rule is how much needs to be torn down before he can build up at Nebraska in terms of what's already here. Are you going to start playing some of your younger guys and getting them ready for future years, or are you going to play some of the experienced guys that are here? That's a question in my mind, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that you can have the kind of success that Harbaugh had in year one. Maybe not 9-3, but 7-5, 8-4 isn't too out of the question. You compare that to Minnesota. I mean, Fleck had a lot of tearing down he had to do. He inherited a football program that I believe went 8-4 the year before he came in.
Andy flipped that. I mean, that roster. I mean, he gutted, man. Yeah, he gutted.
That's what I'm saying.
Turned.
He tore it down. In his first year, he was 5-7, and then 7-5. And then he has that 11-1 season. So look at Minnesota. I don't think there's as much tearing down required at a place like Nebraska. And if you have some continuity, if you're able to fill some holes with some transfer portal guys, which we've seen Matt Rule do, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that a 7-5 or 8-4 season is out of the question, which will start that path of you improving and getting better year by year, which is what we've seen with Harbaugh at Michigan, where it's been a slow process, but every single year you've seen that Michigan team, barring the COVID year, it feels like they've gotten better.
Some guys that are going to be key this winter conditioning to make some first impressions. Good story from Brady Oltmans. Of course, where is Thomas Fedoni with that tight end room? You have Emmett Johnson, not a that long ago get at running back, Minnesota Player of the Year. What's Hickman's story? We talked tight end. And then defensively, a kid that Nebraska beat Michigan State out for, and some other Big Ten names, is Roquan Buckley. So those are guys are going to be very key to that accelerated rebuild. Babbers, thanks for popping on, bud. We'll get you that burger from Rosie's, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
There he is. Mike Babcock, Bill Doleman on site. Elijah Herbel. Hail Varsity continues from Rosie's downtown 10th and P.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out, Hail Varsity Radio. We are here at Rosie's, 10th and P, Roadshow Wednesday. We're here ahead of Nebraska-Ohio State. And we'll be back here end of February for Nebraska-Michigan State. I will attempt to keep Junior and Mama from accosting Tom Izzo. Bill Doleman just cracked the Guinness. It's all good. Elijah Herbel back in studio. Mike Schuchart, Wilderness Ridge.
'Tis the weekend.
Joins us to talk. It's a weekend for Bill Doleman. And Shuey, you haven't been out on the greens yet today, have you, bud? Thanks for joining us.
No, I need to put my ice skates on today, man. A little slippery out there.
Yeah, are the greens? Are they playing fast?
That's a no comment. Shuey, let's give some advice to Brett Maher in golf terms to help him out with
yips.
Help him fending off Vizcaíno, who's been added from the practice squad for this weekend.
That sounds like the yips to me, by the way. That's brutal. That is golf, man. That's what happens. The guy can make a 65-yarder, but he can't make a 20-yarder. So that's the yips.
Well, Shuey, the way I described it was, in comparing it to a golf game, that first extra point he pushed right. The second one, he sliced it again, and it goes right. And then by the third one, he's trying to play the slice, and he misses left because for the first time all game, he finally hit one straight, and now it doesn't slice. And it just felt like me on the golf course where you try to aim left, play the slice, and this one goes straight, now it's straight out of play. That's how it felt to me watching that game.
Pretty much. That's what they call the overcompensator. So, overcompensating.
I'm going to go with that as to my problems off the tee box.
You're what are you overcompensating for, Schmitty?
Well, I was going to say life in general, but anyway.
Lack of power. Shuey, we've been discussing Nebraska football and kind of accelerating that rebuild. And are you optimistic with that? You've been a very you've been a realist with Nebraska football, with the ups and the downs. But do you think they're in position, or are they going to need things to break just right for, kind of an eyebrow-raising 7-5, wow, this first year under Rule?
I think they're going to need a little of that anytime it's the first year trying to implement your stuff. I mean, I'm super optimistic because he has a plan. He knows what he wants to do. He's recruiting to it. Now, how long does it take for his players to basically are able to do it at a high level? But be able to do it, So it's like I'm super optimistic. And get to it, keep to it. So now it's just time to get all those right number of guys. I think you're going to see some moments of really good stuff, and you're going to see not so good stuff. But I'm super excited.
I think we had some problem there with technically, Shuey, with your phone. I think what you were saying there was in agreeing with me that how does Nebraska not go undefeated? I think that's what you said based on our previous conversation, because I'm wondering that right now is how does this team not win them all based on what we talked about earlier with Mike Babcock?
I can give you a few reasons, a few answers to that. Injury, heartbreak, inexperience, transition, the new system. Man, I'm turning into a Debbie Downer here.
Yeah, I was being positive there.
Wow. But I like
maybe it's the Guinness.
It might be. I like the portal additions, Shuey. Nebraska's landed 9 dudes. What's your take here real quick, bud, on Nebraska in the Dylan Raiola sweepstakes? He had a pretty good interview today with On3.
I don't know. They're showing that kid so much love and the opportunity. I mean, obviously he's getting pulled in a lot of directions, has a ton of opportunities, but it just, as they keep selling him on what it is they're going to do, what it is he can do, how it is he can do what he is going to do to make this super successful. I just think in the end, it's going to be hard for him not to want to come here.
Shuey, whenever you look at what's being done in recruiting, they're putting in work on the recruiting trail, and I think Husker fans are excited for some of these guys coming in, and you alluded to that in your first answer with, potentially Raiola here in a couple years, but also some of the guys they added this cycle with Fields, Majacek, all the in-state kids they were able to keep around, and yeah, there's talent coming in, but would you say it's fair that the hallmark of a good coach is someone who can make the most of the talent that they have and amend their system to fit the talent that they have, and that, you know what, if Matt Rhule is going to be successful here, he is going to find success in year one because that's what good coaches do, that they make the most of what they have?
No question. That's what you do. You identify your people and you put them in the best position that not only is best for them, but how they help the team and what's going on. So it's like, how can you keep moving pieces around until you find that right fit for that person that is good for them, and if it's good for them, it's going to be good for the team, And again, that's why I'm so excited about what's coming, is because he has a plan, and he's going to keep moving those pieces because he knows what his plan is. He's just going to keep plugging pieces into that plan because he knows it's going to work, and he gets the right pieces in place, and you're going to see some pretty good stuff happen.
Mike Schuchart's with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey, before we say goodbye, be safe on your travel, my friend, and real quick, what's happening at Wilderness?
Just kind of in a little bit of a slowdown now, especially with the weather, but starting to ramp up all of our stuff, getting ready for the golf season, which will be fast upon us. So just kind of enjoying a little of this downtime and getting ready for the season to start.
Did you turn the water on and play a little ice hockey this afternoon with the Aquatic Center?
Yeah, I ventured out a few times and tried to test my balance skills. Not so good at times.
Well, it's the terrain. Thanks for making time today and braving it with us on the air with these conditions. But we'll check in next week, Shuey. Thanks for the time, brother.
You bet. Thank you very much. Everybody stay safe out there.
There he is, Mike Schuchart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Good to spend time with him. A couple of questions here on the stream. Evan Bland with us next hour. And also Jeff Smith, Nebraska-Ohio State. If you're coming on down to PBA, we want to see you here at Rosie's. 10th and P is where we're located. Get a beer, get a burger, maybe a shot warms you up, or just do the water with lemon thing if you're the dry January. I applaud anybody that can make it through January. I'm painting a bad picture of myself. Mark asks the question, does Nebraska go after Garcia, Miami quarterback in the portal? Brian, a faithful listener, chimes in with a really good take that says, look, man, from a fit standpoint, you got a pro-style guy, and Sims is your dual threat. Casey's obviously your pro-style. Nebraska, Bill and Elijah, they are up against it scholarship-wise now. You'll have more after winter conditioning, probably from a departure standpoint. We'll go there and wind down this first hour here at Rosie's. 10th and P. It's Hail Varsity Roadshow Wednesday.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Roadshow Wednesday here with our friends at Rosie's, downtown Rosie's location in Lincoln, just south of Embassy Suites. 10th and P, you're invited down here ahead of Nebraska-Ohio State. Early tip for Nebraska, and the Buckeyes do or die here for both teams. Season left, yes, but both teams needing to get out of the skids, with Nebraska dropping their last two in kind of blowout fashion. Ohio State not able to buy a win. We'll hear from Fred Hoiberg next hour. Also, going to spend time with Evan Bland, more on Nebraska football, the Dylan Raiola interview he had with On 3, and that acceleration with the rebuild. Really good story from Mitch Sherman. We've been focusing in on that. Guys, with the quarterback dynamic, let's go there here. You have two guys that have experienced some success, personally with their statistics, but also dealt with injuries much of their career. Casey Thompson got inked up with the NIL deal. Good for him. He is back. He's got a mental rep it here this spring and then be ready.
It's not $13 million, though, is it?
No, it's not.
Just checking.
No, I mean, 14.
Can they cover it?
Yeah, I think they can. But Casey's a proven commodity, really talented thrower. I think he's a very capable runner. I don't know how durable he is. You flip it around to Sims, and he's dealt with some injuries, foot issues. But, man, he is pretty athletic and electrifying, and I think can be a really talented passer, but he's more of a run-first guy. Fellas, you're going to need both of them to make it through next year.
Well, this is why I don't necessarily think that Garcia from Miami is going to be. I think Nebraska's happy with what they have at quarterback. You have like two different styles of quarterback. Man. You got a run first guy in Sims. You got a pass first guy in Casey Thompson. I think if you decide that this offense runs better and is more efficiently, and it takes some pressure off the offensive line, if your quarterback's a run first threat, you have that guy in Sims. And if you decide, you know what, we have some good pass catching options, we need to get them the ball, and it's more important that we keep Casey protected in the pocket and he's able to deliver downfield, you have that guy. So I don't think you need to add any more quarterbacks this cycle. I think you have one option each way, depending on what you think is going to work better with your offense. And why would you jack with that if you have the two options that you think are going to be able to lead your offense the best next season? I don't want to turn this into a Joe Burrow, well, is he better than what we've got? Because that's been beat to hell, and I don't want to go there. But you look at it, and I think Nebraska has two options. No matter how they want to run the offense, they have a guy that can run their offense in that way. So why do you need to bring more competition into this room whenever, you know what, you could spend those scholarships in other positions where you really need them?
Look, what's most important about the quarterback room with 1 and 2 is the same thing that I said a couple of years ago when Vedral transferred back to Nebraska, and Nebraska had some experienced backup, behind Adrian Martinez. It was not great quarterback play, but at least if Adrian got hurt, which we knew he was, could certainly happen at any moment, at least you had somebody that you could put in there that had some seasoning. All right. You go back to last year when Casey got hurt. Chubba Purdy, for as excited as people were about him and the perceived quarterback controversy, we saw last year that there really was a great divide between first and second team. And Purdy had sat out, almost a year and a half or so? Nebraska, with the two of them that they have now, they've got some experience in the room, and that's key.
Hour 2 from Rosie's downtown, next on Hail Varsity.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio Road Show here at Rosie's, downtown Lincoln. 10th and P, you're invited out. If you're making your way home, if you're making your way away from work, you're escaping, good for you. And you want a place to watch Nebraska and Ohio State. If you're not headed there to PBA, get down to Rosie's. Bill Doleman is absolutely scouring the menu for... He's going to pull a Charles Barkley. I want one of everything, and he'll do that. Elijah Herbel.
Well, you're paying.
The rent has started already with Guinness. You have Elijah Herbel back at our studios up at Cornhusker, and that is he's nice and warm. We're comfy here on center stage. You're invited down here to Rosie's, and make Rosie's your pre- and post-game stop for all things Nebraska. Cody Jinks, you have a chance to put your name in and enter in tickets to go see Cody Jinks. That is going to be up at Omaha February 21st. So do that, and we welcome in Evan Bland, Mr. Football with the Omaha World Herald, does Husker baseball as well. Evan, you making it through a icy, slick, adventurous Wednesday?
That's right. It's the attack of the wintry mix. So I suppose it depends on where you are. But, yeah, it's either really cold rain or really, I don't know, loose slush. So, yeah, hopefully everybody's driving safe out there.
It reminds me of the night in, I think it was late October, Doleman, and Evan, you may remember this as well. Elijah, you weren't around yet. But 97, where Nebraska is rolling Kansas on the road, and all of the trees were frozen, and everyone looks a little droopy, everyone being all the trees and plant life on the way down here because of the freezing rain. And that was an adventure the next day. But you know what? It's not as bad. Folks are zooming by here on 10th Street. Cautiously, of course, but it's doable. Evan, do you remember that KU game I'm referencing?
I remember the game. I was elementary
You're
school.
young.
So I remember missing like a week of school, more than anything, because the power lines went down, like you said, and the snow didn't last all that long. It lasted like a day or two, but that's the only time I can remember ever missing multiple days of school when there was like no snow on the ground. And as a kid, man, that was the best. That was good stuff.
Meanwhile, I was still,
bumping.
I believe I was 6 months from being conceived that's bad math, 9 months from being conceived, 9 months, or 18 months from being born, so a little bit before my time, but I've heard a lot of stories about that storm.
Evan's like, yeah, I was in grade school. Elijah's like, wasn't around. Dolman was like, I was in Lawrence.
Well, I was hosting the Osborne show back when we went 60-3 and won 3 national titles, but that's what I remember about that era, and I'm guessing that was one of the many KU games in which Craig Johnson, the great running back out of Omaha West Side, he always had great games. He was like a fourth-team I-back, right? And he always ran for like 150, 200 yards against Kansas. That was his one game every year because Nebraska was up by 40 after the first quarter. So you put the third string in there, and Craig Johnson would run wild. Bring Babber on. He'd know what I'm talking about.
Good old Craig Johnson for 3 behind left guard, behind Aaron Taylor. Let's dive into the tour today, Evan, and Nebraska coaches out on the road. Let's start there. Specifically, again, another crack at Dylan Raiola, at least some FaceTime, this time with Coach Satterfield.
Right, they're hitting him hard. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Matt Rule was down there last week. We all saw the Twitter picture of the boombox and the football, so he was able to lay eyes on him then. And like you said, Satterfield's down there today. A lot of the staff is out in Texas, so everyone's fanned out. But there's no doubt. I mean, Dylan Raiola remains sort of the crown jewel of the 2024 class. He's a top priority for Nebraska for all the reasons everybody already knows. I think what's worth noting about his recruitment that's different from a lot of the 2024 prospects would be that typically quarterbacks do tend to want to complete their process sooner than others. So you would expect, if he follows the sort of trends that you see from a lot of higher level quarterbacks, he's going to want to wrap up his recruitment at some point during the spring, March, April, May, so he can be able to lock in on that school into the fall, be sort of a peer recruiter, complete his senior year. So there is a little bit more of a sense of urgency, even though there's still the traditional planning period to come up for this 2023 group, and Nebraska continues to build that out. There is still that urgency to get as much face time with Dylan Raiola as possible, because you got to imagine there's going to be a decision here in the next few months.
I was going to ask Evan real quick, do you have a gauge on Raiola's timeline? And you're right on it. I mean, you're getting that out of the way, and then you're going to play your senior season. He's already committed once. Things went the wrong way for Ohio State, but it's been SC, it's been Georgia, it's been Oregon. I mean, it's been some of the who's who that have done well with quarterbacks. And then, of course, you have Nebraska, you have Colorado visiting, Oklahoma's been there. So do you think Raiola follows suit, or does he continue to stay patient? Because that was kind of the theme of his interview today.
Right. Well, I mean, he can do whatever he wants, right? He can go to any school that's out there, and they'd be happy to take him. Obviously, his name's been linked with Georgia quite a bit. He was at the national championship game, and there's so many obvious reasons why a top guy would go to that school to win and to have that exposure. Oklahoma, obviously with a different coaching staff now, they've turned out some Heisman, finalists and winners in recent years. USC, kind of the same reason with Lincoln Riley. Alabama, obviously, is another strong choice. But I think that the tough part for Nebraska is it won't get to sort of prove what it can do on the field before he commits. In all likelihood, it's going to have to be a pitch based on faith, a pitch based on being the start of a turnaround, being the start of something special, as opposed to being sort of the latest cog in a machine as it rolls along and makes college football playoffs every year. So it's possible, certainly. I mean, he has a clear affinity for the school. Everyone knows about his dad and how he grew up around here, him being Dylan. Nebraska's got a shot. Their coaching staff has proven to be pretty persuasive on the recruiting trail. So it's going to be a tough pull for Matt Rule and company, but I think at this point, again, you can't rule them out, and we're just going to have to see how this process plays out over the course of the next few months.
Evan Bland is with us here.
RHULE him out.
Oh, that was good. That was a good one. That was good.
Tip your way
that.
to try the veal.
That's why we have Bill here. But Evan, what's your read on the NIL factor with Dylan Raiola? And I asked this kind of in the wake of Walter Rouse. We had Dean Blevins on earlier this week, and he said this wasn't about the money. I'm not sure all the Husker fans are buying that, and maybe we'll never know how much the NIL was a factor with Walter Rouse and how much money he may or may not be getting from Oklahoma. But what's your read with Dylan Raiola in terms of importance to him? He's sat down for a couple interviews during the recruiting process, and that's been the talk of the college football world has been NIL and guys getting money, especially when you look at what's going down at Florida. It's going to be a case, where Husker fans are going to have to pass the hat around and throw $20 in, and that's going to increase Dylan's odds of coming here. Because I talked to my roommates about this and some friends, and they said they were all willing to put down $20 for Dylan Raiola. So it could work. But my question is do you get the read from Dylan Raiola that's going to be important in his recruitment, how much money his school is going to be offering him?
Well, yeah, I guess we can have a church service and just sort of pass the hat around and figure it out from there. But it's hard to say because it's just another factor that a prospect will have, right? I mean, sometimes location's important for kids. Sometimes it's about the coaches. Sometimes it's about development. I mean, there's so many factors, and NIL certainly is one of those. It's a tricky thing in a way because these are all private transactions, and we kind of have to go on context clues and reading tea leaves a little bit. I mean, we know that what Casey Thompson said last spring, which was if you are a starter at Nebraska, you can make six figures. I think that's probably the baseline for a guy like Dylan Raiola. And then, you hear about some of the high-end recruits in the 2023 class. I think it was The Athletic had a piece talking anonymously to some guys about sort of the NIL offerings that they had. And it was, in some cases, sort of handshake agreements for, $1 million, maybe a little bit more than that. And so when you're talking about playing the most important position in football, being the number one overall recruit in that class, he's going to command the market. I would think it's got to certainly be in the seven figures at some point. And so we've seen Nebraska boosters step up before. We've seen NIL collectives at other top programs step to the plate as well. So I suppose at some point it becomes how much do you put out or offer up front, and how much of it becomes sort of an incentive where if you settle in and become what everyone thinks you'll become, then the deals really roll in from there. So I would certainly think it's safe to say that it's a factor, NIL. How big of a factor, I think is tough to say because, again, it's the sort of thing that guys don't like to expound on too much. It's the kind of stuff that doesn't get reported all that often. But make no mistake, that'll, I think, be another sort of gauge as to how, Nebraska's own NIL collectives are doing based on how competitive they are for a top-flight recruit like Dylan Raiola.
Is it possible that Dylan Raiola is going to make more money playing at the University of Nebraska than his dad did playing 10 or 13 years in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. I guess it's entirely possible. Nebraska might put Dominic on like its university letterhead to try and get this kid to show up. But, Nebraska's had 2 transformative quarterbacks. If you go back, to the Devaney Osborne era, and really the Osborne era, I've said it before, it will be forever true. Turner Gill is the most important recruit in the history of Nebraska football. Nebraska was winning games but could not get over the Oklahoma hump until Gill arrived. And then you had the malaise, 9 wins a season, but you had the malaise of the early 90s, and you bring in Tommy Frazier. Nebraska is moving in a positive direction with Matt Rule. Dylan Raiola has to sense that a little bit. But I also go back to Dad. The comments, you really didn't hear much from Dominic during the Scott Frost era about the recruitment. There didn't seem to be a lot of satisfaction. There are rumors out there that aren't very good, but you just didn't get a connection, sense that there was a connection between the two. But Dominic has come out in the last couple of days in these recent visits talking about how impressed he has been with Matt Rule and the relationship that they have built. That has to have somewhat of an impact on Dylan when he hears Dad say, I like these guys. Son's not going to want to disappoint father if Dad's got a really, really positive impression about what could be done at Nebraska. And that's why all this talk about Georgia is national. But I think that when he says family is family and Nebraska's family, I think that weighs in pretty heavily on what that kid's going to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. You look no further than what Matt Rule just accomplished with the 2023 class. Building relationships with players in some cases over the course of just a few weeks to make them feel comfortable to sign and have a future at Nebraska. I think the Malachi Coleman example was another really good one where he had options and could have gone a lot of different places. He had a strong relationship with the previous staff and was able to stick with Nebraska based on his feel for Matt Rule. And so, I think that's the case with a guy like with Dylan, and certainly Dominic has reflected that. And Dominic was part of Nebraska landing Ben Scott out of the transfer portal, the center coming over from Arizona State. So he's already sort of had a little bit of a hand in, or maybe a little assist in helping build Nebraska's roster to this point. And so we'll see. If nothing else, I think we've learned about Matt Rule. He's convincing. He's you get him in a living room and he's going to lay out a case, and he's going to be pretty persuasive about what that's like. And he's going to be pretty tenacious too, right? He got out to Chandler, Arizona as quickly as you could. Nebraska's got, as we said, Marcus Satterfield out there again today. It's pretty clear that Dylan Raiola is a priority to this staff. But it's more than just, how many times do you call a guy or text a guy? It's do you have a personal relationship? And they've got Donovan, of course, in the O-line room who can attest to that. And I think in a lot of cases, these players talk to each other and their peers. And Dylan Raiola can call, a bunch of Carolina Panthers. They can call a bunch of former Baylor Bears and about what it's like to play under Matt Rule. And I think, to a man who I've spoken with, everybody has raved about the culture that he sets and just sort of his approach to not just football, but to life. And, so, we'll see how much that resonates with Dylan. Again, he's got dozens and dozens of other top suitors probably pitching similar messages. So any kind of little edge or advantage you can get could make a big difference.
Evan Bland with us, Hail Varsity Radio here at Rosie's downtown Lincoln, 10th and P. Evan will run you down again. Be safe, travel safe, and thanks for jumping on with us today.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Good stuff from Evan. Been pretty fascinated here by the Raiola discussion. Hall of Fame coach Jeff Smith going to be with us, but you just wonder to what Evan pointed out, and we've touched on as well, do you continue the tradition in winning at a Bama, at a Georgia, or are you the guy that flips a program? That's it's going to appeal. More from Rosie's here on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back here at Rosie's, it's Hail Varsity Roadshow Wednesday in front of Nebraska-Ohio State. Tip-off about 30 minutes away, and Nebraska trying to get back in that win column. Elijah Herbel back at our studio. Bill Doleman joining me here on the stage at Rosie's. And we welcome in Hall of Fame coach with Nebraska and Lincoln Southeast. Talk some hoops. Jeff Smith with us. Coach, you make it down to PBA all right? How you doing?
Great. I just parked. I always park over in this festival lot and walk over the bridge. So just parked. It wasn't a terrible drive if you take your time. Saw one in the ditch out on the bypass, but it wasn't bad. But, yeah, I almost turned and came to Rosie's when I heard the Guinness comments with Bill Doleman, but I decided I better go to the game.
Well, we've got a Guinness for you here. You got a lot of options here at Rosie's. What are some of Nebraska's options when it comes to replacing Jawan Gary? I don't know that you can replace him, but tell me about what needs to happen tonight here for Nebraska basketball to get off the schneid.
Yeah, I think Denham Dawson's probably your best chance to replace what Gary does as far as defensive presence, maybe some offensive rebounding. I don't know if they can replace that the way Gary rebounds. I think it's tough to replace his physicalness and strength too. And unfortunately, Ohio State's kind of a tough physical team to deal with. So, when you lose one of your top three, which I would consider him, it's not easy to replace. And I think Wilhelm has to pick up some slack. I think Denham has to pick up some slack, and Jamarcus Lawrence has to do a little more if he gets time. And that's just the way it is. And I think with Nebraska, if you can continue to defend a little bit to stay in the game, and they've done a pretty good job defensively, if you can try to hang with them on the boards, and they are definitely emphasizing boxing out, if you don't turn it over excessively, then it comes down to making shots. A lot of times college basketball is down to making shots. And, you look at the stats, and teams go 2 for 22 or 3 for 17. Rarely do they, are they in the win column. And I think, with CJ and Casey and their somewhat liability on defense, if they aren't shooting it well, it makes the margin even smaller for Nebraska to win. So, if Emmanuel can make a few, if Sam can find his shot a little bit, and Wilhelm can make some, and maybe Jamarcus Lawrence, that would be helpful. But CJ and Casey, if they're going to be on the floor, they got to make shots.
Totally agree, and you've had decent performances, at least against Purdue, by Tominaga, and you're waiting for kind of a breakout from Wiltshire. Coach Jeff Smith with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, Nebraska and Ohio State. Coach, we'll get back to some hoops in a moment. We've kind of had an ongoing Dylan Raiola discussion. You've done the recruiting thing in your career, and were part of a staff that kept everybody within the metro and outlying areas in Lincoln to go to the NCAA tournament many consecutive years, that golden era. You were part of that. You also have recruited outside the state. But as we talk football and Raiola, give me a thought here on Raiola and his personality to me. And I don't know the kid. I know Dad. I know of Dad. I had class with Dad 100 years ago, and probably had a beer with Dad a few 100 years ago too. And that macho ability of, I'm going to come in and be the reason this thing flips, or part of the reason this thing flips, versus, I don't want to say taking the easy way. It isn't easy to go start at Alabama or Georgia, but that might appeal to him from a personality standpoint.
Oh, I think it definitely could. I think guys like that are, pretty full of confidence and swagger, and I think with his, and part of the recruiting that we had back in a long time ago, but there was connections. The Pikowski was connected to Nebraska. A lot of the kids were Nebraska. You use your connections you can, and I know that's what Coach Rule and those guys have to be doing. On the lighter side, and we'll get back to a serious part of it, I think I'm ready. I got my credit card ready for Elijah's NIL GoFundMe page for Dylan Raiola. I'm ready. And then I think you and I should rent a mobile home, grab our golf clubs, camp outside the Raiola house until he makes a commitment, and then you can do your shows from there. We can play golf, between shows. I'm ready to go. I got approval from my wife on that, so there's the recruiting plan for us anyway.
I love it. We don't even need an RV. We'll just stay at my mom's.
Who's also camping out at the Raiola house.
Yeah, I sent Grandma and Mom down there.
It might be more effective to have the mobile home parked right in front, though, just a presence.
On the serious note, but I love your idea, Coach.
No, but I think Nebraska's doing the right thing. Obviously having an uncle on staff helps. You've got to use your connections. You've got to hit him hard. I mean, this could be a program changer, and you've got to leave no stone unturned. And I heard on ESPN radio yesterday something about $4 million that Stroud turned down or whatever. I don't know what kind of money they're talking, but you got to throw the kitchen sink at the kid and sell him on your system, and take the big swing.
Well, Bill brought up a point last segment of could Dylan make more than Dominic Raiola, and I looked up the numbers. Dominic Raiola's career earnings somewhere over $20 million, just over. His final contract was 4 years, $20 million, but I don't believe he completed that contract. I believe he retired before the conclusion of that contract. So that is something to monitor here. If he's making $4 million a year times 4 years in Nebraska, he's still just short of Dad's career NFL earnings.
Hey, remember the conversation we had last summer when Ryan Day spoke to the Columbus Touchdown Club and seemed to be piously saying, this era, it costs $2 million to have a quality quarterback come to Ohio State. When he was also saying, hey, if you're a quality quarterback, $2 million is what you're going to get if you come to Ohio State. So we kind of know what teams are going to start throwing down in terms of a marker for a high-quality quarterback. And I'm thinking also, Elijah, you mentioned Joe Burrow and the whole conversation a few years ago about what Scott Frost said. Look, we all know that if Joe Burrow had come to Nebraska at that time, he would not have had the kind of college career because he didn't have the personnel around him. If Dylan Raiola makes the decision to come to Nebraska, first of all, it's going to be 2 years before he really has an impact on the program. Might get to play as a freshman, but it's going to be 2 years. But the personnel at Nebraska is far better now than it was 5 or 6 years ago when Joe Burrow was leaving Ohio State. So again, if Raiola decides he wants to play for dear old Nebraska U and put another Raiola name on the side of Memorial Stadium, the opportunities for him to have some success early on are certainly there. He's not going to come into a cupboard that's bare, as I throw a cliche on the table.
Well,
Coach
and then that adage of how many recruits does he attract? If we could get him to commit early and we actually get that commitment, can he add some 4 or 5 star receivers and some O linemen that want to come block for him? And that'd be huge.
Jeff Smith with us, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow here at Rosie's in front of Nebraska-Ohio State. Coach Smith is headed to PBA. Big ball game for Nebraska. Coach, as we wrap up, a thought with just kind of the landscape of college basketball. K-State's win over KU last night, that overtime thriller. B, just a take real quick on Creighton's win. As they kind of got off the schneid here. Things are heating up here, just 8 weeks left till Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I guess I kind of expected Creighton's win. Butler struggled a little bit, and even though it was on the road, I felt like Creighton is kind of turning the corner a little bit, getting Kalkbrenner, really healthy, and I think Kaluma's playing his role a little better, not trying to do too much. And then Shireman is, again, I think Shireman's learning that he needs to get those guards the ball back a little bit every once in a while. So I feel pretty good about Creighton's chances down the stretch and in their conference. I think they're 4th in their conference right now. I still think they're a tournament team that could go fairly deep if they get the right matchups. That K-State game, as good as K-State was, I was very impressed of how Coach Self kept them in the game. I felt like he used those early timeouts. He noticed some mismatches. And, man, I tell you, the Johnson kid for K-State is a fantastic player that, I heard Nebraska could have had, but the heart condition kind of slowed that down. But that was a fun game to watch, and that was a March-type game to me.
What is ultimately, Coach, the key for tonight with Nebraska if they can get a win? I think it's the fork in the road ball game here for both programs.
Yeah, I think the key is to keep them off the glass and play the defense you've been playing. I think it goes back to what we said at the start of our segment here, that they've got to knock down shots. Ohio State they play 4 freshmen, so it's not like they're Purdue and play a veteran or some of those veteran teams, Rutgers and the veteran teams. So maybe the crowd. Well, I don't know how big the crowd will be, but just the home court. And the only bad thing is they've lost 4 in a row. Ohio State has, so sometimes that changes your mentality as coaches, which affects the players' mentality and motivation, and so that scares me a little bit. But I think we just got to make open shots and continue to do what we're doing on the defensive end.
Coach, despite the slide from Ohio State, they're still a 6-point favorite tonight. In your opinion, is that too much, too little, or just right?
No, I'd say it's just right. You look at they were 10-3 on January 1st after beating Northwestern 2-0 in the league. They had wins over Rutgers, Cincinnati. Well, kind of won over Rutgers. They snuck that one in there illegally. Texas Tech, and then their losses were only to San Diego State, Duke, and North Carolina. And then they lose on to Purdue at home by 2, and on the road at Maryland. And then Minnesota's their only really bad loss, I would say. So I would say that's about right.
Coach, we'll catch up tomorrow, weather permitting, with some high school basketball, Southwest and Pius. And, hey, thanks for making time and taking time tonight to talk some hoops, talk some recruiting, and enjoy the ball game tonight at PBA, Coach.
And he's welcome to buy me a Guinness anytime.
I'll buy you one. Don't worry about
it. Jeff Smith with us. Coach, take care. Appreciate you.
Take care.
There he is, Jeff Smith with us, as we are here at Rosie's, 10th and P downtown, getting ready for tip-off here, Nebraska and Ohio State. A Jock Doc on the way with Nebraska Orthopedic Center, and we'll wind down a road show Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio Road Show as we're at Rosie's downtown in front of Nebraska and Ohio State. Snow Angel time. We say hi to Dr. Ben Woodhead, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, at Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Ben, how much NFL have you been consuming? Man, what a good playoff run there's been.
I've been catching up on all of it during the playoffs. It's been as about as good a playoffs as it's been in recent years, I can tell you that.
It has been magical. It has been tremendous. And, of course, Buffalo and Cincinnati, a lot of emotion attached to this one this weekend. The reality for Cincinnati, Dr. Ben, is they are down 3 starters on the offensive line, potentially one of those, Jonah Williams, dislocating his kneecap against Baltimore. Second times Williams suffered the same injury all the way back to week 5. And lay out for me here just the nuts and bolts of dislocating a kneecap, and we know how important the left tackle spot is for Joe Burrow and every quarterback.
So these are injuries that, oftentimes after you dislocate the kneecap and they put it back into place, you can immobilize them for a short amount of time and let them get back into kind of activities. The problem is, obviously, if you continue to play and then you dislocate again, there's a set of ligaments on the inside of the knee that you tear. And so if you don't give those adequate time to heal, you can get this recurrent instability or subluxations or dislocations where the kneecap pops out. And that's exactly what happened to him.
Well, it's an injury that Williams was sidelined with, again, from week 5. He came back. He's also in the final year of his contract. There's a noticeable difference as Joe Burrow's a bit of a punching bag anyway when you look at sacks allowed by that Cincinnati offensive line. And when it comes to repair and treatment, quite honestly, how do you just manage? How can you manage, and how effective can you be if you've had it happen twice already and you're technically going to try and rub some dirt on it for this weekend?
Well, I think his main goal for this time is to basically get through the season, play through the playoffs, and get as far as you can without having it pop out again. This is likely going to have to be addressed, though, after the end of the year, because if it's happened not once but a second time, generally some type of reconstruction procedure is necessary to fix that and tighten the inside of the knee so that doesn't happen again, because he'll certainly have a tendency to do that over his career if it's not fixed.
Jonah Williams is out. Dr. Ben Woodhead with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. And let's talk about the procedure, the work that you do, and then the rehab process to follow.
Yeah, so when you actually reconstruct these, you reconstruct some of the ligaments. You can do it whether you do it with stitches or the own tissue, or sometimes you can actually use a graft for it to basically tighten the inside of that knee. The problem is, though, after you actually fix it, then you got to allow it to heal. So you allow it to heal for, 6 to 8 weeks. Don't let it move too much. And then the rehab process truly begins, where you get back your strength, you get back your motion. So it's a very, timely recovery if you actually have a reconstructive procedure to where he's back to actually full throttle in football.
Dr. Ben, why and how does it happen? You look at the offensive tackles in the NFL, 6'5" to 6'8", 3 bills, but they are dancing bears. They can move. Is it just the wear and tear, the stress on what's required on the offensive line?
Yeah, offensive line certainly has its own set of problems with the knee. That's why a lot of those guys wear those knee braces. The kneecap's an interesting structure, though, because it has a tendency to dislocate out just with the forces of how we move. And so if you cut or pivot wrong or take a shot towards the inside of the knee, that can cause a tendency for the kneecap to dislocate. Usually you have ligaments on the inside of the knee that hold that into place really well. But like he had done the first time, once you actually disrupt those and you get back in and you don't allow a full recovery, the scarring, he's just had a increased propensity for that to happen again.
Dr. Ben Woodhead joins us here, a Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, and Jonah Williams, our topic today, left tackle for Cincinnati, out with that dislocated kneecap. And Dr. Ben, with the procedure and the tightening you talked about from a rehab standpoint, is this more of a foolproof intervention when we talk about all the fixes that go on? Once you fix a kneecap, is this more of a stable part of the body that stays fixed?
It absolutely should, as long as he follows the protocol, allows it to heal. I mean, this should get him back to 100% over time. He should be able to, function at his previous level. You hear about all these kind of devastating knee injuries, and they all certainly have their place that they can cause problems later on. But as long as this becomes stable and he gets his strength back, he should be back. He should be back at it hopefully next year.
Is this one of the more tougher injuries to recover from, or is it down they're all difficult, but is it down the line comparatively to like an Achilles or an ACL, MCL? You tell me where it ranks in your opinion.
I think all these knee injuries are hard just because, from a knee standpoint, that's where these guys get a lot of their power, their sprinting, their cutting. It's such a vital joint for them to basically function at their appropriate level. And then the mental aspect of it, whether it's an Achilles, whether it's a knee, whether it's a shoulder, that hurdle for these athletes to get past. So there's so many facets, I think, to the recovery process in general for these.
Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Jonah Williams, our discussion point, Cincinnati Bengals offensive tackle. And Dr. Ben, with like lingering pain or discomfort or injury, is that common? Can you have tenderness, swelling? Can you have arthritis, scar tissue? What is after the recovery, after, let's say, Jonah Williams gets this fixed and he's as good as new and gets paid and is able to play more years in the NFL? Great, but what's he dealing with long term?
anytime you have an injury like this, especially to the knee or one of the other bigger joints, you certainly can have downstream effects, and arthritis is certainly one of them. Anytime the kneecap pops in or out, you can take off cartilage. You can have injury that sometimes is not always seen on the MRI that you can see at a later time. And so it certainly can place him for a susceptibility for arthritis down the line, stiffness, maybe not full strength. And so these are big injuries, and these can be devastating. Hopefully this is one that he can bounce back from, though, and won't be a career ender.
Lastly, Dr. Ben, do you see more kneecap dislocations in football, or is there a sport that leads in this category?
Not necessarily a sport that leads in the category. A lot of it just depends on the athlete, depends on kind of their factors with how their knees are, their hips are. So those are a lot of the factors that actually play a bigger role. So any type of cutting, pivoting sports can certainly do it.
Dr. Ben Woodhead with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Joda Williams, left tackle for Cincinnati, a second kneecap dislocation is on the shelf, and Dr. Ben broke it down for us with what Williams is dealing with. Dr. Ben, you have a great week. Enjoy the NFL playoffs, and thanks for a few minutes with us.
You as well, Chris. Thanks, man.
Big thanks to Dr. Ben Woodhead for joining us on this Jock Doc segment here today, and we're going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio after the break as we get you geared up for tip-off between Nebraska and Ohio State coming up at 6 o'clock. We'll wrap up the show after this.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, and it's been awesome to be here at Rosie's 10th and P downtown Lincoln in front of Nebraska-Ohio State. In about 7 minutes on BTN, we'll be back out here in February for Nebraska-Michigan State. The pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, kind enough to ride shotgun. Have a Guinness, Elijah Herbel flexing in studio. Bless his heart for making it in. Weather is still a little bit hazardous if you're traveling, so please... that's a reality, but at least the snowfall projections were way off. A reminder to get buckled up with the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. The driver has one job. That's to drive, and be sure to buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. All right, basketball. Kisei Tominaga getting the nod, getting the start in front of Wiltshire. That news coming down. Jacob Padilla from Hail Varsity tweeting that out. Guys, we kind of talked about that last Friday leading in. How long do you keep riding with Wiltshire? Maybe Wiltshire comes in and sparks off the bench. He had a good outing against Indiana, but that's been weeks ago, at least offensively.
I think Tominaga gets the start and gets the green light. And he'll be launching them. I think he goes 9 for 17 tonight from behind the arc.
Okay.
Career high 27 points.
Just one Guinness right now for Bill Doleman.
Well, when we had the previous segment and Elijah was checking on the -6 in Ohio State, I saw him go to the phone real quick. So
this is not true. Denied the allegations.
Elijah pretty much got his bet put in with his guy named Sal that used to tend bar but now runs an app. For a while.
I think Tominaga has a big night. Why not?
He has to.
Let him. Yeah, I mean he's in there to do one thing. I mean, that's a tell. You put him in the starting lineup, his job is to get in there and you shoot.
Well, and I think to open up Kisei, it's also going to be a guy like Derek Walker who has to have a big night. Ohio State is not running out with a lineup comparable with other Big Ten teams where you got the 7'1" guy in the middle and you combine him with a lot of physicality and size around the wing. I mean, Derek Walker is taller than anyone in Ohio State's starting five, which that's when was the last time that happened for Nebraska basketball, that Derek Walker was the tallest guy on the floor? So you have a good chance with Derek Walker to try to make some noise inside, and if the defense collapses down, it really opens up a guy like Kisei. So I think along with Kisei having a big night, it has to be Derek Walker who frees up a guy like Kisei, and we'll see how his passing looks tonight, Derek Walker, and how effectively he's able to get to the rim against a smaller Ohio State starting five.
Gotta happen tonight for the Big Red as they have been struggling, to put it nicely, and Do we have time for a Fred comment or not,
No,
Elijah?
we have run out of time.
You're like, shut up and let me out of here. Tomorrow on the show, we'll run down Brandon Vogel, Danny Burke from VEASAN Sports Network. Guys are playing bags here. Jacob and company got signed up for the country show tickets here. Let me see who that is again. That's just
Cody Jenks.
Cody Jenks.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Cody Jenks. Thank you.
You can tell Schmidt's a big country fan.
No, I do like country. I like Hank. I like Zach Brown. I like Eric Church. And then I'm out of
out of
takes. I'm out of takes.
That's some country pop there.
Get the show podcast at Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Take care. Talk tomorrow at 4. Thanks.